All right, what's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, and this is Smell Goods. Listen, one of my favorite sports to watch, one of my favorite sports growing up, played a little in high school, didn't necessarily make it to the college level, but it's okay, is basketball, right? Love playing basketball growing up, love watching it even now. And whenever you have conversations about basketball, you also have to have the conversation about who's the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time, right? Now, if you're like me, you already know and recognize that the GOAT is a young fella by the name of Michael Jeffrey Jordan. He's the GOAT, right? You might throw Kobe into the conversation. You may even throw LeBron into the conversation. All right. Listen, we having conversations. I'm gonna give you this acronym, as far as how I put it, okay? Michael is the GOAT. Kobe is the Mamba. No question about it. LeBron is the llama. And I'll spell that out for you. He is the one who loves losing alongside multiple all-stars. We can have that conversation. That might be a live that we have a conversation on, but I digress. What I want to talk about is the GOATs of clone fragrances, which are the fragrances that I have in my collection that I think are at least in that GOAT conversation, right? I'll probably do another one as far as part 2 of this, but these are the first 5 that I'm like, if you're talking about GOATs of clone fragrances, at least what I have in my collection. I recognize that there's a lot more out there that I haven't put nose on. I don't have my collection in my collection. But I wanted to have the conversation, start the conversation. What are some GOATs in the clone world of fragrances? All right. Now, I'm not going to put these in any particular order. I'm just going to kind of say these 5 have to be in that conversation. And just to full discrepancy or full disclosure, I should say, this idea came from a conversation that I was watching my guy Walt over at Fat Boy Finesse. I was watching him have, and they began this conversation in his live, and I was like, you know what? That's something I definitely want to talk about and at least bring my thoughts into that conversation. All right. So again, these are my 5 that should be in the GOAT conversation. Not saying that they are all GOATs or definitive GOATs, but all these 5 I think are in that conversation of whether or not they are GOATs of clones or greatest of all time clones. All right. Some of these should be no surprise, because I think you probably, if you've been a fan of the channel, if you've been kind of in fragrance community for a while, you probably will agree with some of these. I don't think any of these are tough choices, if you will. But first one up is from the House of French Avenue, which is also a Fragrance World brand. It is Liquid Brune. Now, this is its take on Altair by Parfums de Marly. Does a pretty bang up job of it, pretty good job of it, getting very, very close to it. A little more orange in this than I normally pick up in Altair. But this, as far as longevity, as far as its closeness to it, as far as kind of what this does and how it does it, I don't think you can have a GOAT conversation without at least throwing this in there and saying that, yeah, it at least is in the conversation or in the running. All right. And here's the thing with fragrances, I don't know that you can have one GOAT. I don't think that there's only one greatest of all time. I think that there's multiple GOATs in this space. Just my thoughts. All right. Next one up, again, not in any particular order, just kind of as I have them over here on the side of my table and pulling them over, we're going to have the conversation. Next one up is from Awatania, I think it is pronounced Awatania. This is Cayenne Classic. Cayenne Classic. This is a take on Dior Homme Intense. And this does a very good job of getting very close to it. And to me, I got to include it because Dior Homme Intense is kind of like, it's almost like a standard fragrance. It is a fragrance that I think is just, well liked, well loved. Not everyone may. Now, I think there are some that will say it may feel a little too mature for them or a little too stiff for them. That may be the case, and I can get that. But as far as the fragrance, I think it's widely recognized as a fragrance that has some staying power, some lasting power, and is an all-around great fragrance. And this does a pretty good job of coming close to it, a pretty good job as far as its longevity, pretty good job as far as all the things that we look to as far as performance. So at least throwing this in, this one might be a under the radar kind of, off the, kind of right in candidate. But Cayenne Classic by Awatania is definitely, I think, something that might just have to be in the conversation. All right. Next one up is one that is newer to my collection, and it is one that I did take a while to get only because I could not find it, or I could not find it at a price that I wanted to pay for it. But it quickly has shot up to be a top one in my collection from this particular brand, and top one in my top one in my collection overall. It is from Latafa and their Pride collection. We're talking vintage radio. This is their take on Initio's Paragon, and I did just go up to my local Dillard's, or not my local Dillard's, but a Dillard's in the area, and put nose again on Paragon, and this does a pretty good job. In fact, I do have a decant of Paragon, so it's right there. It's very close. Again, probably over the 95 percentile as far as its closeness, and just performance, all of those things that we're looking for. Does a very good job, and is one that I think this is in the running, in my opinion, for a GOAT, for a greatest of all time clone, because of all that it does and how it does it. All right. Again, vintage radio from the Latafa Pride collection. All right. Next two in this just quick video, as far as what I consider to be some of the GOATs in fragrance. One does such a good job that I'm saying that it's probably 98 percentile of being a one-to-one. It's not exactly a one-to-one, and I had to find something that I was like, this is a little different there. But one is very, very close. The other is a fragrance that, in my opinion, kind of makes the OG irrelevant for me. All right. First, the one that makes the OG kind of irrelevant for me. And again, buy what you want to buy. I'm not saying never buy the OG. I'm just simply saying, for me, and just kind of how I would use it, this is one that I would probably not ever get the OG. And we're talking about, from Afnan, we are talking 9 p.m. The black label one. This does Jean Paul Gaultier's Ultra Male, and does a pretty good job of it. Does a good enough job. Like I said, for me, I probably wouldn't wear Ultra Male a lot, although you can see a dent. But again, this dent is a combination of me and my son. But as far as the fragrance itself, this is something that I think is definitely almost a shoe-in candidate for GOAT, for greatest of all time, as far as clone fragrances. I think it just definitely, I don't think too many people will disagree. Some people may not go as far as me to say that it replaces the OG for them. That's perfectly fine. I don't recommend. If you can ever get the OG, get the OG. The OGs are going to be what you wear. But for some of us that are looking at how can I smell great on a budget, we're looking at the clones. This is one that definitely fits that bill. All right. Again, from Afnan, this is 9 p.m. All right. And then the next one up is Joe Milano, and this is from their Game of Space line. This is Wildcard. And this is their take on Bond number 9, Lafayette Street. And again, this is, I did a side-by-side of them. This is 98% there. I mean, and that's just, just a rough estimation. This is close. This is really, really close to it. And so in my opinion, another one that is a shoe-in to be considered as part of the GOAT conversation as far as fragrances. Yeah, this one, if I had to rank them, I wouldn't, because it's so difficult, because it's so subjective, right? There's really no methodology. It's just kind of what I'm feeling at the moment. Right now, this is probably my number one. However, that could change next week when Paragon is more, or Vintage Radio is more on my mind and more, appropriate for what I'm wearing. So you got 5. I gave you 5. I'll probably do a part 2 and give you some other ones that may have slipped under radar. Maybe these will be the ones that are kind of more of the right end candidates. And I recognize that there's a few that are not necessarily in this initial list. We can't really have a GOAT conversation without touching on something along the Club de Nuit line, without touching along something along in the Supremacy line. I get that. I recognize that. But these are just 5 that I wanted to give you as far as an initial introduction or initial conversation of the GOATs of cologne fragrances. All right, that's it for this one. Listen, do me the favor, as always, stay safe, stay sane, stay smelling good. And then again, help me honor, give me, do me the honor. That's it. Got tongue tied there. Do me the honor of hitting that like, hitting that subscribe, requesting notifications, and sharing, and then meet me in the comments. Also, listen, the whole thing about LeBron versus Jordan versus Kobe, think what you want to. I know how I feel. I know I'm right. If you want to think LeBron is the GOAT, we can save that conversation for another time. You might just blow up the comments about it. It's okay. It's all good. But I appreciate you stopping through. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Be blessed. Peace.